I buried my wife on a Tuesday. It rained. Of course it rained. People said the usual things, she was so young, so full of life, what a tragedy. I nodded, thanked them, shook hands, hugged strangers who knew Melissa better than I ever truly did. Then I went home. Alone. With our 8-year-old daughter asleep in the back seat and a silence in the house that felt like it had teeth. The next morning, I found the diary. It was under the floorboards of her closet, beneath a stack of winter sweaters and a box labeled, Sarah's baby clothes. It was leather-bound, unmarked. I only opened it because I thought it might be her old journal from college. I wish it had been. The first page read. He touched me again today. I told him I loved him. I think I meant it. I don't know what to do anymore. And below that. Kevin says we just need more time. Kevin. Our next-door neighbor. My best friend. The man who gave the eulogy at her funeral. I stared at the page so long the words started to blur. Kevin. Kevin and Melissa. It didn't make sense. Or maybe it did. Maybe I'd ignored the signs for years. He was always around. Fixing our gutters. Bringing over leftovers. Making Sarah laugh while I worked late shifts at the firehouse. I thought he was just being kind. A good neighbor. A brother in spirit. Turns out, he was stealing my life one touch at a time. I didn't say anything to Sarah. She was already grieving. She'd lost her mother. She didn't need to lose her childhood, too. But I needed answers. So I kept reading. The entries went back almost 2 years. Some were vague. Some were graphic. There were dates, names of places, private thoughts I was never meant to see. He said he'd leave her if I asked. But I can't do that to his kids. Eric's shift changed this week. That gives us Thursday. He told me I'm not the kind of woman who deserves to be hidden. I felt like I was going to throw up. I looked through our shared calendar. Sure enough, Thursday nights. Melissa always had book club. And I was always on the night shift at Station 4. I called the woman who ran the actual book club, Jane. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. Do you guys still meet on Thursdays? Jane paused. No, we moved to Mondays like a year ago. I almost dropped the phone. She didn't lie to cover herself. She didn't even need to. Because I never asked. That night, I stood on my back porch and looked across the lawn. Kevin's house was dark. Quiet. His family was out of town. He'd told me at the funeral that they were staying with his in-laws for a while. I walked over. Knocked once. Twice. No answer. I used the spare key he gave me last Christmas, the one on the Ohio State keychain, and let myself in. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and old secrets. In his office, I found it. Another journal. Melissa's handwriting. Pages filled with poems and letters he had clearly kept. At the bottom of one page. If we ever get caught, tell Eric the truth. He deserves that much. He never did. He stood next to me at the burial and told me I was strong. He lied with his hand on my shoulder. The next day, I saw him. Kevin was watering his lawn like it was any other Tuesday. Like he hadn't destroyed 2 families and stood over my wife's casket with my daughter in his arms. He looked up. Waved. And I waved back. I don't know why. Maybe because hate is too easy. Too honest. I needed to understand before I tore him apart. I waited until after dinner. After Sarah had fallen asleep watching Finding Nemo for the 100th time. I kissed her forehead, turned off the TV, and walked across the yard like I had 100 times before. But this time I didn't bring beer. Just the journal. He opened the door. Confused. Smiling. Hey, Eric. You good? I held the journal up. His face drained of color. I didn't wait for an invitation. I walked past him into the kitchen, dropped the journal on the table, and sat down. He closed the door slowly. Like he was buying time. You kept it, I said. All of it. Her poems. Her letters. Her pain. He didn't answer. I looked up. She asked you to tell me. He ran a hand through his hair. Eric. I didn't think. You didn't want to think, I snapped. Because that would have made it real. Because if you admitted it, then you'd have to face what you did. He sat across from me. Looked like he aged 10 years in 10 seconds. She was lonely, he whispered. And I was stupid. But it wasn't just an affair. I slammed my fist on the table. There's no such thing as, just, when it comes to my wife. He flinched. Then he did something that surprised me. He cried. Not a single tear. Not a staged sob. A full collapse. Shoulders shaking. Breath gone. I loved her, man, he said. I loved her. I hated that word in his mouth. Like it belonged to him. I stood up, pacing. And your wife? Your kids? My daughter? He nodded, still weeping. I ruined everything. And I don't expect forgiveness. I didn't know how to stop. That's when I asked the question I had been avoiding. Did she love you? Silence. He didn't answer with words. He nodded. I walked out without another word. Not because I was done, but because I was afraid of what I'd do if I stayed. That night, I sat on the edge of Sarah's bed. Watched her sleep. Her tiny hand clutching a stuffed dolphin Melissa had given her on her 5th birthday. And all I could think was, what do I tell her when she's old enough to ask who her mother really was? The world sees people in black and white. Good mom. Loving wife. Loyal friend. But Melissa was all of that, and none of it. She was 2 things at once. She was someone who kissed my forehead and then met my best friend an hour later in a hotel. She was someone who packed Sarah's lunch with love, and wrote poems to another man after putting her to bed. She was flawed. But she was still Sarah's mother. And I couldn't erase her. I wouldn't. A week later, I met Kevin again. Not in anger. Not in peace. In necessity. We met at the cemetery. He stood 10 feet away, hands in pockets. I'm moving, he said. We're selling the house. My wife, she found out. I nodded. And the kids? They'll be with her. I'll see them weekends. If I'm lucky. I didn't say anything. Then he added, I told her everything. I had to. I looked down at the grave. The stone still fresh, the dirt unsettled. You should have told me, I said. While she was alive. I know. And that was the end of it. I went home that night and burned the journal. Not out of hate. Out of mercy. Because some truths are too heavy to carry. Especially for an 8-year-old girl who still asks me to braid her hair like mommy used to. It was a Sunday afternoon when I found it. I wasn't looking for anything, just cleaning out old things. Sarah was at a friend's birthday party, and the house felt quiet in that kind of way that makes your chest ache. I opened the piano bench to toss out some of Melissa's old sheet music. She hadn't played in years, not since her arthritis started acting up, but the bench was still full of papers. That's when I found the envelope. It was sealed. Cream-colored. My name written in her handwriting across the front. Just. Eric. No date. No explanation. No warning. My hands were shaking before I even broke the seal. Inside were 4 pages. 4 pages that stopped time. Eric. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And if I know you, it also means you found the journal. Or Kevin told you. Or maybe both. I know you're angry. You should be. I deserve every ounce of it. I'm not writing to make excuses, I've had enough of those. But I need you to hear this from me, even if it's too late. I never stopped loving you. That sounds impossible. Contradictory. Maybe it is. But it's also true. There were moments, quiet ones, stupid ones, where I felt like I was drowning. The routine. The motherhood. The nights you were gone. The days I didn't recognize myself in the mirror. I blamed you, sometimes, because you were safe. And Kevin was, not. He saw me. Or at least he made me believe he did. He made me feel like I was still someone worth wanting. I never meant for it to last. But then it did. And I didn't know how to tell you. I was a coward. I kept telling myself I'd end it. That I'd confess. That I'd choose you again. But the longer I waited, the harder it got. Until there was no good time. Only guilt. And secrets. And silence. You loved me too well, Eric. You trusted me too much. And I betrayed that in a way you never deserved. But please, please, don't let my mistakes define Sarah's memories of me. Tell her I sang to her when she was in my belly. That I cried when she said, Mama, for the first time. That I would have given anything to stay longer, to watch her grow, to be better. Tell her I was weak, but I loved her fiercely. And you. I'm sorry I let you carry all of it alone. There's a photo album in the attic. Behind the blue trunk. It's all labeled. Every birthday. Every Christmas. Every first tooth. I made it for you. For her. For the days when I'm no longer there to tell the stories myself. If you never forgive me, I'll understand. But please don't let Sarah grow up thinking love can't survive failure. Sometimes it can't. But sometimes, it transforms into something stronger. Whatever you choose, know this, you were always the love of my life. M. I didn't cry reading it. I didn't throw it. I just sat on the living room floor, letter in hand, and let the silence say everything it needed to. Later that night, I climbed into the attic. Moved the blue trunk. And there it was, a thick, leather-bound photo album with gold-trimmed pages and little notes next to every picture in her handwriting. Sarah's first steps, she ran to Daddy. The camping trip where I burned the marshmallows. 4th birthday, the year she wanted to be a dinosaur. I flipped through it until the sun rose. In the morning, I placed the album on the coffee table. When Sarah came downstairs, rubbing her eyes and clutching her dolphin, she pointed to it. What's that? Memories, I said. From Mommy. She sat next to me, small and warm, and opened it. And we turned the pages together. One by one. Something shifted in me after that letter. Not overnight. Not all at once. But it was real. For the first time in months, I stopped waking up with anger as my alarm clock. The grief was still there. It probably always would be. But the bitterness? That started to fade. Because the more I read Melissa's words, the more I realized, she didn't write them to save herself. She wrote them to save what was left of us. I didn't respond to Kevin's texts anymore. Not out of hatred. Out of clarity. He wasn't my problem to solve. He wasn't my healing to chase. He was just a man who made selfish choices and now had to live with them. Me. I had Sarah. I had a second chance at being present. At being the kind of father Melissa had asked me to be in that letter. The kind of man Sarah would grow up remembering not for how he broke, but for how he rebuilt. I started therapy. Quiet sessions on Tuesday evenings while Sarah had gymnastics. It was awkward at first. I hated talking about myself. But slowly, brick by brick, I built a language for what I felt. Shame. Love. Rage. Forgiveness. My therapist asked me once, "What do you want Sarah to say about you when she's grown?" I didn't have to think long. That I stayed, I said. That I showed up. Even when it hurt. We took a trip in early spring. Just the two of us. A little cabin upstate with a frozen lake and no Wi-Fi. We went sledding. We drank hot chocolate. We laughed so hard we scared the birds away. One night, by the fire, she asked me, "Do you think Mommy can see us?" I blinked. "I think she sees the love, sweetheart," I said. "And I think she's proud of you." She curled into me. "I think she's proud of you too, Daddy." And just like that, something in me let go. Not of her. Not of what happened. But of the weight that kept me from breathing fully. From living again. It had been nearly a year since Melissa's funeral. Life wasn't normal, not really. But it was ours now. Me and Sarah. Weekends at the farmer's market. Movie nights with popcorn and messy blankets. Her drawings slowly replacing the framed photos I'd taken down. And then came the knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Sarah was upstairs, humming as she worked on a puzzle. I opened the door, and there he was. Kevin. Older. Thinner. His eyes sunken. Like regret had been living inside him, chewing at the corners. "Eric," he said. I'm not here to fight. I just need to talk to you." I didn't move. "I don't want anything from you," he said. "But I think I owe it to Sarah. To say goodbye. To tell her the truth, if you'll let me." The rage didn't come back the way I thought it would. Instead, something colder settled in. I stepped outside and shut the door behind me. "You want to talk to her now? After everything?" He nodded slowly. "I never stopped thinking about her. I know I have no right." "You don't," I said. "You were like a second uncle to her. And then you threw that away." He didn't argue. Just stood there, broken. "I'm trying to make peace with what I've done," he said. "I'm in recovery. I've been sober for 6 months. I'm seeing someone for counseling. I'm not proud of who I was. But I'm trying to be someone better." I looked him over. The weight of his guilt was obvious. But I had to think beyond him. I had to think about Sarah. Would hearing the truth help her? Or would it stain the memory of a man she barely remembered? "She still talks about you," I admitted. "Sometimes. In little ways. But she doesn't know what you did." He swallowed hard. "I'd never tell her anything that would make her hate her mom. I promise you that." The wind picked up. The leaves danced at our feet. "I'll think about it," I said. "But if this is about easing your conscience, go find another priest. I'm not him." He nodded. "Fair." Then he reached into his coat and handed me an envelope. "This is for her. When you think the time is right." And he left. I stood there for a long time before going back inside. I didn't open the envelope. I put it in the same place I kept Melissa's letter. A drawer marked "Later." Sarah never asked who was at the door. She just looked up and smiled. And in that moment, I realized, maybe some truths weren't for now. Maybe part of being a good father wasn't protecting her from the past. It was protecting her peace in the present. Spring came late that year. Sarah turned 9 in April. We threw a small party in the backyard, balloons, cupcakes, her best friends from school. She wore a yellow dress with sunflowers on it, the same pattern Melissa once wore on a beach trip years ago. She laughed the whole afternoon. And when the sun started to dip below the trees, she ran to me and asked, "Daddy, can I keep the candles? For memories." I smiled and said, "Of course." She's that kind of kid. The kind that collects moments like treasures. The kind her mother would have adored. That night, I sat by her bedside as she fell asleep. Her breathing slow, steady. A page from a coloring book still clutched in her hand. And I thought about the letter Kevin gave me. I hadn't opened it. Still hadn't decided if I ever would. Maybe one day, when she's older, when she starts asking harder questions. Not just about Melissa, but about people, about love, about flaws. Maybe then I'll let her read it. Or maybe I'll just tell her the truth. My version of it. The one she needs. The one that doesn't poison. I'll tell her her mom was bright. Complicated. Brave and scared at the same time. That she made mistakes, but she also made magic out of ordinary days. That she was loved. By me. By her. By someone else, too, but that love is messy like that sometimes. That being a grown-up isn't about getting everything right, it's about trying to do better after you get it wrong. And I'll tell her this. That when the world falls apart, you have a choice. You can live inside the rubble. Or you can rebuild something softer. Something honest. Something new. I don't wear my wedding ring anymore. But I keep it in a box, alongside Melissa's letters, photos, and the ultrasound picture of Sarah from 8 weeks. That's the story I'll give her when she's ready. Not the betrayal. But the beginning. And maybe, when she's older, she'll sit her own daughter on her lap, open that album, and say, "This was my mom. This was my dad. And they loved me enough to keep going." The past will always whisper. But now, it whispers with peace. And sometimes, that's the best ending we get.